Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 45 of the Dodgeball Marketing Podcast. I'm Michael. This is Chris.
I'm Chris.
Hey, Chris. And
Was that loud? I probably popped out that microphone.
Yeah, and today we're going to talk about what makes a good website header. So we're going to talk about that. Chris, get us started here. What do we think about having a logo in the header?
Take it or leave it. Just kidding.
Yeah.
So, okay, here's the thing, logo in the header. Obviously, you're going to have your logo in the header, but a lot of, there was a time where people try to play
Or maybe
around.
it's not so obvious to people. A lot of times people are really proud of their logo and they make it kind of like part of their hero. And I think that's a really bad idea.
Yeah. So we'll just say it point blank. Always have your logo in the header, and always 99% of the time have it in the top left-hand corner. And the reason, there are things we call web conventions, and these are things that are way beyond like sort of trends or things that are people like to do, but they've become ingrained in how people expect to navigate the internet. There's a few of them. One of them is when people are on a website and they have the question, "Where am I?" Mm-hmm. They land on an interior page and they're like, "What website is this?" Where do their eyes go? They go up and to the left. Mm-hmm. That's where your logo should be. That's the home base that says to the user, "Hey, you are at GoUps.com or bullhornmedia.tv." That's the website you're at. So this is a convention that you should not break. There's no reason at all to not have it in the top left-hand corner, your logo. So that one, that one's more of an ironclad law at this point.
Yeah.
It's a convention that it will always be with us. So
So next up, is there a link to a form in the header? It makes sense. It's kind of what you're used to seeing. But whatever the main idea of the website is, there ought to be like a big button for that in the top right corner of the website. And so a lot of times this is request a free quote, schedule an appointment, request product information. So an e-commerce site would be very different. Up there you might have like login, but we're talking about like a lot of websites in the world for small businesses, and any kind of medium or any kind of non-e-commerce site. You're trying to generate some kind of contact, either scheduling an appointment or getting product information. There's always something that you're trying to do.
The first step.
Yeah, the trap that you need to avoid falling into is the problem that happens when you have website editing by committee. It's important to have someone in your organization who's responsible for delivering a good user experience and knows and understands these best practices and can say, hey, wait a second, guys, we've got two different ways for people to do the same thing in the header. We've got a request free quote and a contact form button. You need somebody who can say, hey, let's simplify that. We need to boil it down to one thing. Yeah. And so if that person's kind of advocating, you can work backwards from there and follow best practices. And one of these is just to cut down anything where somebody has to think to make any decisions.
Yeah. You're not giving people options in that case. You're making them do extra work just to move to the next step.
That's right. And it's exponentially more valuable to strip it down because of the tight window of time in which someone's making a decision about whether or not this web page is useful to them. When your web page is loading, I want you to imagine that user is hovering near the back button. They've already given up on you, and you've just got a split second to let them absorb and take in information. They're not going to your website and reading it top to bottom and soaking it in and thinking about the history of your company. What they're doing is saying, do I see what I need? And it's almost like an unconscious thought. So what we want up there in that top right is one button. The trap we've seen people fall into, I mentioned, is when you have a new software like an appointment scheduling, but maybe it doesn't work for everybody in your organization because they're not all in the same system. So you end up with a contact us button or something. When you're talking about that action that you want people to take, a form fill or scheduling, you need to pick a strategy, make it comprehensive for your organization so that you can simplify that touch point with the user. And I like seeing something that's in the button style of the website up there. Whatever your buttons are on your forms, I like seeing that in that top header for that one action that you want people to take.
Makes it stand out.
Yeah. Besides, and we'll talk about phone next, but for that form fill or providing some information or filling in a contact form, I like for that to be one big idea and to have some benefits-oriented text. So don't just say get quote. You can say get free estimate or get free quote. So that word free in there is just another little benefits bit of text. But if you're competing there with yourself with a contact button that just says contact us, you don't need two things in the same style it's like The Incredibles. If everyone's super, nobody's super. And that's the case with elements in your header. You want every one of them to be unique and special all the way across so that they can do their job as well as possible.
Perfect. Number 3 here is there a clickable phone number in the header? Now, this kind of goes with that second one, Michael, in that I'm a big fan of, if you're going to have a form, if you're going to have something that's more form related, get a quote, set up a demo, then you should probably not have the phone both. There's some places where you well, I always like having focusing the user on one thing.
So that would be ideal. Yeah,
I think for most businesses, there's usually one primary thing that's their next. So for instance, if you are a software business, your next step is probably form-based. It's probably going to be like a set up a demo if it's like enterprise software. Or if it's kind of a self-serve software, it's going to be like start free trial or get started or something like that. If you're a local business, like let's say you're a locksmith or you're a
dermatology practice.
Your website visitor might just want to pick up the phone and call you.
Yeah.
I run advertisement for a contractor training business, and it's a higher ticket item. It's usually $2,000 to $3,000 for the seminars, and people are less prone to just add to cart and buy. They have questions. They want to talk to people about it. What am I getting into? What's it like? And so the biggest call to action we have. A clickable phone number in the top, and that's the thing that most people choose to do. We have some sales that are directly from the website, but most people want to ask questions about a $3,000 purchase, right? Yeah. So my philosophy is figure out what the most common path of action for. Make that your primary thing. So for a lot of businesses, it's click to call. Make sure it's clickable. You don't want people to have to copy paste and then go over to their phone. They're not going to do that. Make sure it's clickable on mobile. And then if you have a secondary, you can show that maybe in your footer or prominently in your content. But if phone is the way that people primarily reach out to you, make it. Put it in the header and make it clickable.
Yeah, and people are using devices like I was in T-Mobile yesterday, and they're even when they're putting SIM cards in. I just got a little iPad for some training that I'm doing, and that got the SIM card put in, so I would have Wi-Fi access, or not Wi-Fi, but just cell tower access from anywhere. But they're offering for another $10 a month to be able to make phone calls from your iPad, and it's just a way for them to sell something. But a lot of people are using computers and phones or computers and pads and other things to make FaceTime calls now, whereas it used to be just the mobile device. So even on a desktop experience, I would stick with that click-to-call capability. Another thing I would add, Chris, on phone numbers in the header is where you have those, try to make it a little bit more personal. Think about the text. Don't just slam a phone number up there and kind of slap it on. Think about what's the experience they can expect. Can you convey? Talk to Jay. Are you going to get to a real person, or is this like a customer service thing only? What is the value proposition of that phone number there?
That's good.
Yeah, and then. Let's see. So next up is the header sticky for mobile? And we go back and forth on this because there are pros and cons to this. A sticky header, let's define it first, is when you're on a mobile device, so you're on something like this, and someone starts to scroll down, they lose the things that are so good that are in the header, like the phone number, the navigation. So one option is to have a little bar of pixels there that don't roll up with the rest of the page. And we call that a sticky header. So there are pros and cons to this, and you can kind of think about this and test it out. But our rule of thumb is if you have a primary call to action that you want people to do, you can keep that in view during the entire visit by having it in that header. Back in the day when we started building landing pages, we would do this with forms on the page. We would keep the form in view because we knew how important it was to keep that form right there in front of someone. Well, this is the same idea. It's keeping that header of the website in view, and that gives them a couple things. Number one, they remember where they are. If they've got a little logo or even a smaller version of the logo that's sort of shrunk as you've gone to a sticky header mode in the top left, so they kind of remember where they are. They might have a click-to-call phone number and maybe a button to take action. like a free estimate button, and then maybe a little link like a hamburger menu, and more people are going now to 2 lines instead of 3, so it's more like an equal sign menu, but I'll just call it a hamburger menu.
I like hamburger.
But that little 3-line thing in there that tells people menu, that's a good sticky header. And if you want an example of this, look at nashpainting.com.
Yeah, this is a site you designed, Michael.
Yeah,
right?
that's one I did. That's the last website I think I ever designed. But that's a good. It's got text or call
this is
with the phone, which is really good, and a request an estimate, and then a little hamburger menu in the sticky header. So I like that. I like that model. We've actually gone back and created a wireframe of that website based on one that we had before when we were designing, but sort of refined based on some things we've learned. And that sticky header is part of our template for doing any kind of trades or local business website.
Yeah.
We think that approach to a sticky header is the best conversion rate, as you said, for that type of company, and where it's relevant to have those things in the header.
Yeah, perfect. And lastly, when it comes to making a good website header layout, is use hierarchy in your navigation to simplify and focus. This goes back to what you were saying about all the little different ways to contact you, all the buttons in the header. A lot of times when people are building their websites, they think that the more options they give people, top level options, the better. And that's not true. It can confuse people, and it can become overwhelming to look at, say, like 10 different navigation items, and it all kind of blurs together. And my philosophy is no more than 6. More than 6, and you're giving people too many things to do, and there are probably things that can be nested underneath. Okay, so like an example might be if you've got all kinds of different kinds of resources. So like, we've got our podcast. We've got our
we've got the history of the company.
History of the company. We've got about us. We've got downloadables. We've got the blog. We've got news updates.
And then we've got 5 services pages.
Right. So a lot of those, you got service pages. They can be nested under services. You've got blog, downloadables, podcasts, whatever. Those can be nested under resources, and so on. So take a look at your navigation and aim for 6 or less navigation items, and that's really going to help the user, orient themselves and get where they're going without becoming overwhelmed with too many options.
Yeah, and something I like is if I have to pick what to focus on with that real estate of the top nav, I strongly favor highlighting the major services categories. So, and anything that's about us or blog or resources or jobs or any other types of us information, not service information. I think all that stuff can be jammed under one item in the top nav. I really don't think people are interested. They're not there for the history of your company. They're not there. The blog may be a resource, and it may attract people to the domain and help lift the domain in search engines, but it's not something people need to get through to get to what they're trying to do. So often we'll have 2 to 3 major services categories in the top nav and devote as much of the real estate to that services side, because that's what people are there to solve their problems. You want to make it as user-centered as possible.
And the bigger you get, I think the bigger you get, the more the about and leadership becomes irrelevant.
Yes.
And you can start to put that in the footer.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's one of the hardest things for a company when they're about 5 to 10 years old, and especially when they feel like they have some history to tell. They want real estate to get that story across. And it's just hard, but nobody cares.
And then eventually it just goes off to investor relations.
Yeah, and then it's just investor relations.
Yeah.
But footer, I think that's a good point. You can move a lot of that stuff to the footer, and folks are smart. They know header, footer, and they can do that. They're just not going to slow down to do it in the pace that you want them to.
Yeah.
Great. This has been episode 45, Dodgeball Marketing Podcast, SEO Basics. If you are enjoying this content, please follow us at Dodgeball SEO on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn to access new episodes, marketing resources, and more. Thanks for listening and watching and being a part of this. We love you guys.
We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.